for live, sir. Another 1 minute. I am visible backside to your screen.
Yeah.
You have any mirror on that or?
5 o'clock. Yeah.
Okay. You are going for live now?
Yes, sir. You can start.
Yeah. Good evening, members. A warm welcome to each one of you for the third day GST refresher course organized by GST Indirect Tax Committee and hosted by SRC of ICI. Chairman of the program, CA Rajendra Kumar sir, and thanks for giving us the opportunity for hosting this program for the benefit of the members of the southern region. Thanks for you, sir. And CA Rajendra Kumar sir is kind enough to give us an opportunity for us hosting this program. And always Rajendra Kumar sir has groomed many indirect tax professionals in the region, in the area of GST, and he has continuously effort for the members for the grooming their knowledge in the GST, and a very humble and simple nature, and always encourages youngsters like us from a rural area to come for the institute and to serve for the institute. I am one of the youngster which is supported by Rajendra Kumar sir. I always thankful to Rajendra Kumar sir for giving us an opportunity and serve the institute in various capacity. And I was served as a Bangalore branch chairman, and I am serving as a SICASA chairman at the SIRC level. Thank you, Rajan Kumar sir, and I welcome you on his options here, sir. Thank you. And for the program coordinator, DC Jain chairman, sir, I welcome you in his options here. I also welcome you. And on behalf of all the members present, I wholeheartedly welcome the speaker, Gaurang Shah, from joining live from Mumbai. And he's a very hard worker and tax expert in almost all the direct taxes and indirect taxes. Is representing a pharma and healthcare industry to ICI. It is my proud privilege to introduce him for the August gathering. And he's a member of taxation committee of CII. And he's having a 17 years of wide experience in the taxation and corporate law matters for the large companies. And he's accredited for designing innovative tools for the various taxation requirements such as GST, TCS, and e-invoicing, etc. And he has also drafted advisory notes on a current litigation matters, including a permanent establishment exposures, GST implications on the complex transaction, etc. And he is also an experience in the mergers and acquisition. And he is also submitted various papers in various forums. And he is also a guest speaker in the esteemed universities and colleges. And he is always supportive, great supportive for the ICI at Western region. And now it's a great, we are fortunate to have along him for our region. And he always believes success doesn't comes to those, it always comes to persons who looks for it. And I just saw all these videos who has uploaded and continuous efforts for the members. And he's doing great things for the members. I welcome you, wholeheartedly welcome you for this program, sir. And sir is handling a session on liability to pay in certain cases. And now is it over to you, sir.
Thank you so much, and I am very thankful for giving me opportunity, and I welcome every participant, and definitely I see to it that I deliver 100%. So.
And for your information, sir, more than 450 persons, members has been registered for this course, sir, 3 days refresher course, and it has been well received by all the members across the region, sir. Thank you.
It's all about your efforts, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. Yeah, welcome everyone. And before we start, I just want to start with one story, and that is how Indian taxation system works. It is on lighter note. So somebody says what you are doing, you will say I am doing business. So then tax authority will say pay GST. You are getting profits out of business. Pay income tax. You are having staff. Pay professional tax. Oh, you got the big gift. Pay gift tax. Oh my God, I'm in tension. I want to go to amusement. Pay entertainment tax. You purchase the house, pay registration fees and stamp duty. You delayed the tax payment, pay interest and penalty. Oh my God, I want to die now. Wait, we are launching that tax.
Yes.
Great. I know in India there are a lot of taxes. There are more than 500 taxes more than 500 laws, and that we have to manage. But definitely our role is to simplify before you. And today's topic is, normally in GST, either supplier is liable to pay the GST or recipient, but there are certain instances, there are certain transactions in which it is beyond supplier and receiver. So we will learn about that. So first section is section 85, which is talking about transfer of business. See, transfer of business, it has to be transfer of business as a going concern basis. So there is a difference between sale of assets and sale of business as such. One big organization may have divisions, and each division is capable of running their business their own. And transfer of such part business also could be regarded as a transfer. So transfer of business can happen in many ways. Mainly, there could be sale, there could be give, there could be lease, there could be hire. Anyway, this sale can happen. So what is the liability arises in this transaction? So as we understood, it's normally transfer or it's only supplier or recipient. But in this case, it is transferor and transferee, both are liable. How? So that there are chances that there are certain taxes which is not paid till the date of transfer. So till that date of transfer, whatsoever liability is there, then those liability has to be discharged by transferor and transferee jointly and severally. What do we mean by jointly and severally? So if transferor fails to pay the taxes, then transferee is responsible for payment of these taxes. There are two aspects to it. Taxes determined till the date of transfer, right? And it may happen that till the date of transfer, tax is not determined, but it is determined thereafter. In both the cases, transferor and transferee both are liable for taxes. It is not only tax, it is tax, interest, penalty, everything together. Now, question arises, what happens after transfer is done? Then definitely all the liability to be discharged by the transferee. And definitely transferee have to make necessary amendments in the registration certificate. There are 5 prerequisites to fall under this definition of transfer. Those are, number 1, there is a transfer. Number 2, it is by taxable person. Number 3, it is transfer of a business. Number 4, it could be in whole or in part. Number 5, it could be sale, gift, livery license, and hire. We now look at each of these requisites independently. There should be transfer. Transfer can happen by gift, exchange also, and by sale. Mere transfer of ownership does not necessarily falls under the definition of transfer. I just give you one example. If one X person is the shareholder of private limited company and having say 95% holding, he transfer his shares to B. In this case, underlying business or assets doesn't getting transferred. Hence, transfer of shares, it doesn't fall under section 85. Why we are hampering that some transaction, if has to fall under 85, then they have to fulfill these conditions. So in later part, we will see that there are certain exemption also, right? So number one, there should be transfer. Number two, by taxable person. Number three is a business. Business is a very wide definition. It includes trade, commerce, profession, vocation, adventure, everything. And the main part is there should be a lump sum consideration. So there are lot of case laws available which talks about in case of business transfer, there should be lump sum consideration without assigning value to each individual assets and liabilities. So this is very important point. And the slum sale, what we talk about, has repercussions in income tax also, and those agreements should be very well crafted. Now we take the example. A, transfer is business to B with effect from 1st July 2019, and there are 5 lakh rupees is the unpaid liability. So whatsoever liability is unpaid, both transferor and transferee both will be liable. In other case, suppose 5,000 rupees is determined, this tax liability is determined in relation to transaction happened before transfer. In those amount also, 5,000 rupees also, A and B are jointly and severally liable. Now this is the heart of this section. So we take an example, XYZ Private Limited Company, HiVoc, one division, say vaccine, as a going concern basis to another company. Whether GST is applicable on this sale. Number one, whether it is counted as a goods or service. So we have to refer to section 7 deed with schedule 2. So section 7, previously it was schedule 2 was included, it is then omitted, and schedule 2 talks about going concern basis. So there are different views, but relevant view is it is not a goods. Why we are saying that? There is a exemption section called section 11, and there is a definition of exempt supply which is defined under section 247. In section 11, pursuant to section 11, there is a notification number 12/17, which talks about what are the transactions falls under section 11. One of the entry is service by way of transfer as a going concern basis. So this transfer will not liable for GST. So this is the heart, and definitely I ask everyone to remember this. At the end, we are going to have question answer where I am going to ask you question, so you should be prepared. Now we talk about section 86, where what is the liability in case of there is a relationship of principal and agent. Principal and agent, definitely there is a relationship, there is an agreement, and where agent is billing to the customer and customer in his own name, then agent is responsible for discharging GST liability. In normal parlance, what we understand is always principal is liable for GST liability, but there is a circular 57 which talks about agency and principal and agent liability when it is arise. So circular 57 is a key, and there it is clearly defined that in case agent is billing in his own name, then only this section will trigger. So agent could be different kind of agents, like it could be factor, we call it as a broker, commission agent, alatia, different kind of agent names are there. All of them are covered under this section. We take an example. Suppose Mr. A, he wants to sell his painting and he engages Mr. B as an auctioneer. Mr. B is selling that painting in his own name. Invoice is having of Mr. B. In this situation, GST liability is jointly and severally liable by A and B. What we mean by that, we get into details. If B sells goods of 10 lakh rupees and liability arises 1,80,000 rupees, and imagine a situation, suppose auctioneer B, who is right now is in the definition of agent, he absconds. Then what happens? What is the recourse government has? And that's why government has defined the liability as jointly and severally with principal and agent. So even if B, he absconds, then Mr. A is liable for discharging this liability. Now, in this case, normally GST registration is compulsory once someone crosses the threshold limit, say 20 lakh rupees. But in this case, where agent and principal relationship falls under section 86, wherein agent is invoicing in his own name, in that case, agent have to compulsorily register himself with GST authorities. And there is no threshold applicable in such cases. On lighter mode, we will see how our GST provisions are. One lady goes to restaurant and she orders, I want to order a soup. Waiter says, madam, we have got one clear soup and second is GST soup. Lady, what is GST soup? Waiter, it is not clear. So it is. So I can understand there are a lot of provisions which is still clarity is required, but definitely institute is doing their best to resolve those issues. Now, question and answer. The consideration of transfer of business should be a lump sum consideration, or there should be assigning values to each and asset or liabilities to fall under that exemption, to fall under section 85. You can write in the chat box. Yes, it is lump sum consideration. Question 2. Liability to pay tax on supply made after transfer is on transferor or is on transferee, or both are jointly and severally liable? What is your answer? Yes, transferee. Thank you so much, Zakir, Satyan, Natarajan. I request all of you to participate, then it will be very interactive and definitely you will learn a lot. Now, in case of merger and acquisition, so section 87 is applicable if in merger and acquisition there are three conditions are satisfied. Number one, there is a court order. For example, there is a company X and company Y, and they both are merged, and new company is formed, which is called as company X and Y. So there should be one order. Number two, such orders is effective earlier than the date of order. And number three, in this transition in between these two dates, that is the effective date and the date of order, in these two dates, if there are transactions happening between X and Y, then on all those supplies, GST liability is payable by the supplier. Normally, I just give an example. If order date is in November 2020 and which has the effective date of 1st April 2019. So once whosoever is preparing financials for 1920, 1st April 2019 to March 2020, this both the companies' financials will be merged. And what will happen? No one will make out the transaction between these two companies. But definitely, if transaction is happened between these two dates, the liability arose and it has to be discharged. So, as we have discussed, if liability is, say, goods worth rupees 5 lakh is supplied between these two dates, then it will be treated, both A limited and B limited will be treated as a distinct companies from GST point of view, and registration certificate will be cancelled from the date of order and not the effective date, which could be earlier than the date of order. So here we have to take care that registration certificates are surrendered after the date of order. There is a Rule 41 which prescribes what is the procedures to be followed in case of merger and acquisitions where input credit lying in the transferor's book needs to be transferred to the transferee's books. So there is a form called GST ITC 02 needs to be filled up, and before that definitely transferee have to register himself with the GST authorities, and he has to definitely accept this transfer of the input credit. Once this process is followed, then definitely all the input credit will be available now with the transferee. So there is a circular number 133. We request please refer that. So we summarize once again. There is a court order. Number 2, there is a transaction. There is a date of order specifies that the effective date is the earlier than the date of order. There is a transaction happening between these two dates, then this section will be applicable. Now we look at the provisions of section 88 where company goes into liquidation. What is the process needs to be followed? Number 1, whosoever is the liquidator, he has to compulsorily intimate liquidation to the commissioner of GST within time-bound manner, that is 30 days. And commissioner, on receipt of this intimation, he has to calculate the outstanding tax liability, interest, and penalty within 3 months. and definitely company have to discharge this liability. In case of private limited company which goes into liquidation, in that case, every directors who are at the time of during this liquidation, they are jointly and severally liable for payment of this tax, interest and penalty. The only window of escapement is if director proves that this liability doesn't arise because of his gross neglect or any default on part of his duty, then only he is not liable. So this is the provisions only in case of private limited company. Commissioner, there are specified forms, say GST DRC 24, where liquid commissioner will intimate this liability. So we take an example to understand further. So XYZ, suppose it's a private limited company and there is a liability arises at the time of liquidation, and at that and company is not able to say pay any taxes because of fund issue, and it could be any other issue. And assume that there were three directors A, B, and C. If definitely company has no cash flow, so they will not able to pay. A, he doesn't also fail to pay, then liability comes to B and C. But B proves that this liability is not on account of his gross negligence or default in his duty. In that case, C have to pay this liability. So as we already discussed that in case of liquidation, there is a jointly and several liability. So in case of private limited company, there is always liability exists jointly and severally among all the directors. And the only escape is director have to prove that liability is not in account of his negligence. What is the liability in case of partnership firm? There is a retirement. All the partners are jointly and severally liable. But suppose one of the partner, he want to retire, then there is a specified process that needs to be followed. What is that process? Retiring partner have to intimate his retirement to the commissioner within 1 month. If he fails to intimate his retirement, then liability continues beyond retirement date. To avoid such situation, it is the duty of retiring partner to intimate immediately. We take an example to understand this section. Suppose there is a partnership firm called M&O and Company. They are partners M&O. O retires, and on 3rd July 2020, and till that time, liability which is pending to be discharged was 4 lakh rupees. And suppose we take there is a liability arises between 3rd July and 2nd August, say 1 lakh rupees. If O intimates his retirement to commissioner within 1 month, so he follows these provisions diligently, then definitely he is not liable for any liability arises after his retirement date. So in our example, he is liable only for 4 lakh rupees. And by mistake, suppose he fails, then definitely he is liable for any liability which arises after his retirement date. In our example, this 1 lakh rupees also he is liable. The main aspect is retiring partner have to intimate his retirement to the commissioner within 1 month. Now we look at what is the liability of guardian, trustee or agent who handles the business of incapacitated person. In the act, in the law, incapacitated person is not defined, but it is understood that incapacitated person means he is person of unsound mind or terminally ill. And what is the, so normally in the general principle of law, which is in favor of minor or incapacitated person to plead his minority or incapability in respect of any claims. To overcome this situation, GST law prescribes that guardian, trustee and agents are liable as if incapacitated person is capable. So this section 91, it enables GST authority to recover taxes from guardian, trustee or agent of incapacitated person. So it is very important to note this general principle will not apply. Now section 92. There are assets. There is a possibility that certain business of taxable persons or their assets are managed by court of ward, administrator, official trustee, any receiver or any other person by whatsoever name called. And in such situation, these all persons are liable for payment of taxes. Now we will get the section 19.3. Any person who is running the business, he dies. What happens after that? Suppose till the date of his death, there is certain liability to be discharged. There are two situations after death of any person who is running the business. Number one, that same business continued by legal representative. Then there is a different tax treatment. And number two, if the business discontinued after the death. In the first situation where business continues, in that case, legal representative or any other person who carries on the business is liable to pay all the dues. Whereas in the second situation where business discontinues, in that case, legal representative is definitely liable, but there is a restriction which talks about is liable to the only to the extent the estate of the deceased. So there is a cap in second situation. So we have to be mindful that different tax treatment when business continues and there is a different treatment when business discontinues. Special provisions regarding payment of tax, interest and penalty in case of partition of HUF or AOP. Normally, property may be partitioned among various members. Each member is jointly and severally liable for payment. Each member is liable up to the date of partition. What happens in case of dissolution of the firm? All the partners of the firm are severally and jointly liable. Each partner liable till the completion of dissolution, and each member liable to pay whether that tax liability determined before dissolution but remain unpaid, and which is determined after dissolution. What if termination of guardianship and trusteeship? Definitely they are liable up to the term of guardianship and trusteeship. So this is the summary of section 97, what we discussed. There is a death of a person. If business continues, then legal representative and any further person is liable. They are liable for the full amount. If business discontinues, then legal representative liable to the extent of this is assessed. If there is a partition of property of the HUF or AOP, then all the members are jointly and severally liable. In case of firm is dissolved, every partner will jointly and severally liable. In case of termination of guardianship or trustee, ward and beneficiary will be liable. Now section 94. If firm, AOP, HUF liability is determined up to the date of discontinuation takes place, all the members and partners are jointly and severally liable. Now we have to understand here very crucial aspect, which is when we call there is a change in constitution of firm or association. So in case of 6, there are occurrences or events there we have to say that this is the change of constitution, and then section 94 will be applicable. What are those 6 events? Number 1, change in profit sharing ratio. Once it is changed, then up to the change there is a jointly and several liability. Number 2, admission of a new partner. Number 3, retirement of partner. Number 4, amalgamation of 2 or more firms. Number 5, conversion of partnership into sole proprietorship or vice versa. Number 6, conversion of firm into company. So we have to be very mindful whenever these 6 events happens, then we have to look at the liability, and it is joint and several, and hence utmost care should be taken to determine whether there is any liability or not, and if there is a liability, then it has to be discharged immediately by the firm first. Otherwise, all the consequence of section 94 will follow, and authority has all the powers to recover all the dues from all the members who were there till the dissolution. So as we have seen, if there is a change in constitution, all the members are jointly and severally liable. Period before reconstitution, and definitely LLP needs to be considered as a firm to fall under this section. And in section, the word defined is a code. It has to be read as, it could be district code, it could be high court, or it could be Supreme Court. Partition of HUF or dissolution of the firm. If firm AOP HUF liability is determined up to the date of dissolution, and it has to be determined as if no dissolution has taken place. In this situation also, every member, every partners are jointly and severally liable. We have to keep repeating there are two liability. One is liability which is arises till, which is not paid till this dissolution if it is determined, and number two, till this dissolution, but if liability is determined after dissolution, those amount also, all the members, all the participants are jointly and severally liable. So these are the two amounts we have to keep in mind. We cannot escape that. If these amount are not determined, so we are not liable. It is not so. So we summarize section 94 as in the chart. Firm HUF AOP discontinued the business, then all the partners, all the members will be jointly and severally liable. And if there is a change in constitution of the firm or AOP, we already discussed what are the 6 events which will fall or which will trigger the change in constitution. In those scenarios, all the partners, all the members will be jointly and severally liable. Let's have a one Q&A. I request all participants to participate in this Q&A. If there is a change in constitution of firm or AOP, who is jointly and severally liable? Yes, Ekta. Yes, Zakir. Jai Balan. I request you to maximum participation. Yes, all the partners, all the members before and after change will jointly and severally liable. Retiring partner should intimate to commissioner in how many days? Yes, Ekta, you're right. Varadhan, yes. Mr. Chandrasekhar, great. Yes. In a month's time. Yes. 30 days. Thank you so much for your participation. Thank you so much for patient hearing. Thank you so much, Institute, for giving me opportunity. Thank you so much. Now, floor is open for Q&A. If anyone has any questions, please write in the chat box.
So there are some questions in Q&A panel also. You can just refer to.
Yes, sir. I request all of you to note down my mobile number, email ID, and you can subscribe to my YouTube channel. And definitely, I will help you in not only the topics I have covered here, but any questions you have in direct tax, indirect tax, international tax, transfer pricing, anything, I will be happy to support you and answer those questions. So there is a question: how to intimate the commissioner on retirement? Is there any specified process? So there is no specified process or form, but definitely on the means definitely on the letter with the backing documents, he can intimate this his retirement, and acknowledged copy of the same will be a valid proof, and he has to preserve it. Hope Ajay, I have answered your question. A very good question. If a proprietor died during the year, whether his heirs can continue the business with the same GST number, with my knowledge, uh, they have to take the different GST number, and that's how they can differentiate the liability. It is now PAN based, and definitely heirs will be liable for taking the new registration in his own PAN number. So there's a one more good question. Please explain the procedure for transferring the ITC from one company to another company after merger. So there's a ITC 02, which is a specified form, and in that form, what is the precondition is transferee have to register first. Number two, once transferor transfers the amount, then transferee have to accept that amount. Once it is done, then process is complete.
Selva, any other questions?
Let me just check so 1 minute.
Otherwise, just I'll conclude with a vote of thanks for this first.
Sir, there's one question around 540. In case of firm dissolution, the machinery is taken by one of the partner. In such case, what is GST liability?
Yeah, in case of after dissolution,
Machinery is taken by one of the partner. In such case, what is GST liability?
yeah, it definitely will amount to sale, to my knowledge, and that would be GST implications.
Okay. There is another question. In death case of an assessee and business discontinuation, there were no tax demand before death. Later, tax demand has come. What would be the tax impact on legal heirs?
Yeah, that's what. So here in this case, if business continues, then even if demand is determined thereafter, then legal representative will be responsible. And in other case, if business discontinued, then definitely demand needs to be paid, but it will be restricted to the assets of the deceased.
The last one, I think, is taken on whether any agriculturist of eucalyptus plantation supplying to paper mill is liable to register in GST if turnover exceeds 20 lakh. From
So,
Murali Krishna.
to the my knowledge is amount doesn't exceed 20 lakhs, hence no liability to take the GST number.
Sure, sir. These are the questions as of now. You can just see the question panel also from your end. If there is any, you can answer the same, sir.
I request to subscribe my channel and give your honest feedback on this session. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Pampana,
Thank
so-
you, sir. Thank you, sir, Gaurav Singh, sir, for giving conceptual knowledge on the liabilities in certain cases in GST. Wonderful session. Thank you for the job done. On behalf of SIRC and on my personal behalf and on all the members present here, it's my proud privilege to propose a vote of thanks for Gaurav Singh Shah for being a time spent and join us in the live from Mumbai. And thank you for your knowledge, sir, enriching us on the topic. And thank you, and we look forward to your support from for SIRC for INSPORT, sir. Thank you. And on behalf of again SIRC and Indirect Tax Committee, I wholeheartedly thank you for the well done job done by you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Yeah.